Okay.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm State Senator Tracy McCreery. I represent the 24th Senate District in St. Louis County. Thank you for hearing Senate Bill 899 today. Ample research backs up the finding that there is a direct link between acts of cruelty to animals and violence towards humans. This includes child abuse, domestic violence, elder abuse, and other violent behavior. Children who grow up in homes with domestic violence witness their pets being abused as well. People who abuse pets often abuse people too. Senate Bill 899 tasks all experts of abuse to work together. This legislation creates a cross-reporting system, which basically just means a two-way street for investigators of children, elderly and vulnerable population abuse, and animal abuse. Under this legislation, experts who investigate all types of human abuse and neglect would be trained to recognize animal abuse, and opposite of that, those who investigate animal abuse would be trained to recognize the signs of human abuse and neglect. If these professionals recognize any kind of abuse while out investigating claims, those abuses are reported to the appropriate professionals who then can go investigate the claims. Under this bill, I truly believe that lives can be saved across the board. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Senator, very much for bringing this bill. Any questions for the Senator? Senator Lewis.
Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for your dedication and hard work on this bill for several years.
Yeah, I filed it my first year in the Senate.
Okay, wow. And I did notice that it's slightly different than last year.
Yes.
Can you explain what the
Yeah,
difference
so
is?
last year, so this bill has a Republican sponsor in the House, Representative Holly Jones from Eureka, also in St. Louis County. She got the bill out of the House last year with a vote of 143 yeses and just 4 noes. And so then it came over to the Senate and had a hearing in the Senate Agriculture Committee in the last few weeks of session. And I, along with Representative Jones, took feedback that we got from the Agriculture Senator Committee members and put that feedback into the version that we're working on this session.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for, working with opposition to hear the feedback. That's what we're supposed to do. So thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
That's great. Any other questions from the committee? The Senator, seeing none. How many do we have here that are in support of Senate Bill 899? Okay, how many in opposition? Okay, let's start with supports. First in support of Senate Bill 899, come on up. And just to remind everybody to please fill out a witness form, and you can leave it right up here at the table.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Committee. John Gaskin here on behalf of the Animal Legal Defense Fund. We'd like to go on record in support of the bill. Richard McIntosh wasn't able to be here this morning, but he's happy to answer any questions and stop by your offices if there are some. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none. Next, in support of Senate Bill 899.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Jay Hardenbrook. I'm the Advocacy Director for AARP here in the state of Missouri. We're a social change organization for the 50-plus with a membership of just over 700,000 in the state of Missouri. We have noticed, and this is anecdotal, but that people will, especially with elderly relatives sometimes, elderly neighbors that people are trying to control, that they will try to abuse a beloved animal. I'm sure we all know people, whether, elderly, children, whatever. In fact, I heard a person in the building just say yesterday that they got the rules changed at their golf course so they could take their dog with them golfing, right? These animals become very, very precious to us, and they can be used by abusers to try to take advantage of people. So we very much appreciate all the work that's been done on this legislation over the years and ask that you support it.
I appreciate your testimony. I'm an animal lover. I think my little baby girl that's a dog is probably listening to this right now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions for the witness? Seeing
you so
none,
much.
thank you, sir. Next, in support of Senate Bill 899.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ashlyn McCarthy Sinclair, and I'm here on behalf of the Missouri Alliance for Animal Legislation, but I've actually spent most of my career in social work. I've done many roles. I've worked for abused and neglected children as an in-home house parent, and for adolescents, I've worked as a support counselor for special needs, really, really traumatized children in foster care, and most recently as a Jefferson County Court appointed special advocate. I'd like to just remind the committee, as Senator McCreery said, that this bill passed out of the House 143-4 last session, and it just passed through its House committee unanimously. As you'll hear, this bill has support from many different organizations and entities that protect the vulnerable. I have some really troubling numbers to share with you today, and I do so because we have the power and the ability to do better. According to the Missouri Child Fatality Review Program, in 2024, 27 Missouri children died from inflicted injury at the hands of a parent or caretaker. 27 children. This is the homicide number, and it doesn't include the enormous number of children who are abused and neglected, but do not pass away. Of those 27 who were killed, 17 were 4 years or younger. These are our most vulnerable Missourians. We count on teachers in Missouri to be our mandated reporters for child abuse, but many of these kids aren't in school. And we count on doctors and nurses too, but many of these kids aren't going to see medical professionals. So who is seeing these kids? It's animal control officers. Nearly 80% of domestically violent homes have one or more pets. Oftentimes, animal abuse or neglect is more public than child abuse or neglect. So frequently what happens is an animal control officer will go to a home to check on an animal that's more publicly being abused or neglected. They'll get there and they'll see a child in the same horrendous conditions, whether that's physical abuse or just urine and feces. And we have animal control officers who can talk to you about what they've seen. So they want to make a report of child abuse or neglect, but they're not mandated reporters. So they have to wait on hold with Children's Division. At the House testimony, one of the animal control officers, I think she said she waited on hold for 6 hours one day. These people are running call to call. They don't have time to sit on hold with Children's Division for 6 hours. So we need to make them mandated reporters so that they can do that online form, submit it, and go about their day, and do right by the kids of this state, and also continue to do the work to keep their communities safe. This bill fixes yet another problem. One study, which tells us what common sense could also tell us, children perceive their pets as special friends, important family members, and providers of social interaction, affection, and emotional support. In homes where kids are being abused or neglected, pets take on a whole new role. They may be the child's only attachment figure that doesn't come with violence. So mom or dad may be an insecure attachment figure, but they're fearful of them. The dog may be the only entity, the only being that they can cling to that's going to always treat them right and teach them what love can be and set them on a path for success. Now, if you remove a kid from a home and you leave that dog in the abusive home, what happens to that kid? Their mind is still at that home. You need to remove the dog or at least get those services involved and investigated to make sure that that animal is not still being abused so that that child can heal. I'll just conclude by saying that the National Sheriff's Association and the National Association of Prosecuting Attorneys have consistently voiced their support for cross-reporting bills, including Missouri's cross-reporting bill. The FBI tracks crimes against animals as a separate entity in their database. All three are doing this because of the common link of abusing animals and abusing humans. They're so deeply intertwined. Bills such as this have already passed in several states, including Florida, Ohio, and West Virginia. Now it's Missouri's turn. Thank you, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I just got a text from my wife, and in fact, my four-legged little girl is listening into the committee right now.
Well,
So thank you. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank
Next,
you.
in favor, in support of Senate Bill 899.
My name is Cody Atkinson. I'm the State Director for Humane World for Animals. I want to say thank you to Senator McCreery, Representative Jones, and Representative Sharp for working so hard on this bill. It is not often that you find something that is straightforward in its ability to really crack down on really horrific things like child, spouse, and animal abuse. I'm also a resident of Independence, Senator Nicola, where we are very proud animal lovers. In fact, our city was the first city in the state, I believe, to pass an ordinance establishing an animal cruelty task force. So would love to see this passed and support that task force as well. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, neighbor, for your testimony. Appreciate it. Any questions? Just a second. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next, in support of Senate Bill 899. In support. In support. I saw a lot of hands earlier.
Chair, members of the committee, my name is Matt Thompson, here on behalf of Missouri Network Against Child Abuse and Kids Win Missouri. You guys have heard about the connections of abuse of animals and abuse of children, so I won't elaborate beyond that, but happy to answer any questions if there are any for me.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, in support.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Amy Graham. I'm a resident of Kansas City, Missouri, and I serve as the education manager at Wayside Waves Animal Shelter in Kansas City. My background is in education. I've been in education for 10 years. The ethos of humane education, which is our department at Wayside Waves, centers on fostering empathy, compassion, and respect for animals, yes, but also for people. One of the guiding principles in the work is understanding that the safety and well-being of humans and animals are deeply interconnected. When one vulnerable population is experiencing violence or neglect, it is rarely happening in isolation. We've talked about the research. We know that it's linked and it's cyclical. Where there is violence towards animals, there's often violence towards people, particularly children. Children who are exposed to abuse, whether directly or indirectly, are far more likely to experience long-term trauma and without intervention may go on to perpetuate cycles of violence themselves. While many people understand this concept when it comes to human victims, fewer recognize the critical role that animals play in identifying and interrupting the cycle early. In the United States, studies have found that in 88% of pet-owning households with substantiated cases of child abuse, animal abuse was also present. This connection is not theoretical. It's something that we repeatedly see in schools and communities. As was already mentioned, for children especially, animals are often their first and strongest emotional bonds. Because of that, the earliest warning signs that something is wrong at home frequently emerge through conversations about pets. Children are often far more willing and sometimes only able to talk about what is happening to their families, their family pets, before they're able to talk about what's happening to themselves or other humans in the home. Through our programming at Wayside Waves, specifically our violence prevention program, we teach students how to recognize animal abuse and neglect and give them the language to talk about it. Time and time again, I've watched students realize for the first time that what they are witnessing or experiencing is not okay. Over the years, children have disclosed stories of animals being kicked, thrown downstairs, having their heads repeatedly slammed into walls. I could go on and on. Children have told us that they've gone outside to find their family dog hung from a tree. Children have described desperately trying to protect their pets, but being too afraid to tell anyone, afraid of what might happen. Just this past year, a student in Independence, Missouri, shared that their mother, father, and brother had taken turns outside shooting and killing their family dog while the child listened from inside the home. Although they did not participate in this activity, they heard it, right? So listening to your family kill your pet is not just animal cruelty, it is trauma and it is abuse of that child. They were scared to share that before my team and I came in and gave them the language to talk about and identify that this was abuse. In every one of these situations, the conversation began with concern for the animal, but it revealed far more about the environment that the child was living in. And in far too many cases, we find that the adults closest to these children, teachers and school support staff, are unaware of the link between animal abuse and human abuse, unsure of what warning signs to look for, and unsure about how or where to report the concerns. Early intervention is one of the most effective tools that we have to stop the cycle of violence. This Senate bill creates a pathway for early identification, stronger collaboration, and better communication between those working to protect children and those working to protect animals. It equips professionals with knowledge, shared language, and clear processes before violence escalates and before more harm is done. This bill is about saving lives, human and animal, and about building healthier, safer communities across Missouri. So I urge you to vote in favor for the Senate bill. Thank you for your time and attention and your commitment to protecting our most vulnerable populations.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yeah.
Very, very sad, and you've succeeded in making me very mad. Not at you, though.
So sorry.
Thank you. Any questions for, yes, Senator Lewis?
Good morning.
Morning.
I was just going to say that it's very difficult to hear your testimony. I'm sure it's very difficult to share those facts, but it's much needed. And just reiterating that this is about saving lives of animals and children.
Yep,
Thank
I
you.
agree. Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Next, in support of Senate Bill 899.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Chelsea Malcolm. I'm a child abuse advocate at Child Protection Center in Kansas City, Missouri. We do forensic interviews of children that have experienced or witnessed abuse or violent crime. I am here today because we simply cannot ignore or afford to ignore and miss the warning signs. Every day I work with children whose abuse did not start overnight. It escalated and it followed patterns. There were often warning signs. One of the most consistent warning signs we see in violent homes is animal abuse. Research shows time and time again that animal cruelty is a strong predictor of animal abuse, child abuse, and domestic violence. As someone who meets with these families and children who are victims of abuse, recounting the worst moments of their lives, I can tell you one thing: if we have one more tool we could utilize to intervene earlier, we should use it. And that's what this cross-reporting bill is. It's that tool to do that. Out of the children that we have seen at our center for violent crime and abuse, I want to tell you the story of one 9-year-old boy. This year that we saw him, we saw 991 kids, so he's just one of those 900. His story in particular, which is very common amongst the other hundreds of kids, is it went across animal abuse, child abuse, and domestic violence. So when he came to our center, he was actually more concerned with the animal abuse than his own horrific physical abuse. So he told us the time that his father, who was the perpetrator in the home, violently killed his dogs multiple times. One of the examples that he utilized was as a way for the father to punish him. He took his small dog, it was a Shih Tzu type dog, outside and put it in the cold. And this night in particular, it was below freezing with snow on the ground and the dog had no shelter. He would not allow him to bring the dog in all night. So the next morning he went out and found his dog dead outside. That same child ended up with a puppy a little while later. Again, the father got mad at him and took his puppy and strangled it in front of him to punish him. The puppy did not die, but during his interview, he described the conditions of the puppy. Its eyes were bloodshot red, it was barely breathing, and it was barely moving. So he took it upon himself to walk the puppy to a neighbor's house to ask the neighbor to get his puppy help. I don't know exactly what that neighbor did, if they took the puppy to a vet or called animal control or the police. But if somebody that came across that situation would have said something is wrong here, we would have been able to intervene earlier. We saw him for physical abuse, but there was time between when he said that puppy incident happened to where people should have had eyes or even acknowledged something is not right, to when he came in for hellacious physical abuse. He did also talk about the domestic violence that he witnessed between mom and dad. In this case in particular, he could not protect himself. He could not protect his mom from egregious abuse, but he did take it upon himself to save his dog that day because he said in his own words, he couldn't handle another dog being killed at the hands of his father. And so in this case in particular, we missed an opportunity. We could have intervened a lot earlier, and he is just one of hundreds that we see in Jackson County each year. When an animal control officer, veterinarian, or humane investigator encounters animal abuse, that may be the only cry for help that that child in that home has. He would have been a prime example of that. Escalating violence, signs of a dangerous environment. This cross-reporting bill is about coordination, early intervention, and prevention. And just a few statistics real fast. So in the state of Missouri, studies show that 71% of families reporting child abuse also reported animal abuse. And in homes of domestic violence, 80% of women talked about how that perpetrator threatened or did harm their pets. So we know time and time again that if animal abuse is involved, that increases the risk of child abuse existentially. Actually, there is a fact behind that. So in the child abuse prevention and neglect studies, it showed that animal abuse in a family increased the risk of child abuse by over 600%. And as someone who meets with these kids and families, It's probably actually higher, to be quite honest with you. It's very underreported. So as advocates, we often ask ourselves, what signs could what did we miss? What could we do better? And this bill would help strengthen coordination between child abuse agencies, law enforcement, and animal welfare. Increasing the risk of early intervention ultimately saves the lives of children. We have child fatalities. There were times where it could have been prevented. And it's really, really unfortunate. When we fail to act, children remain in homes longer. Violence escalates. It gets worse. It is about giving professionals the tools to protect Missouri's most vulnerable, children and animals who cannot protect themselves. With tens of thousands of Missouri children connected to abuse reports, we can't afford any more blind spots in the system. Children deserve a system that sees the signs, listens, and acts. This bill is about hope for Missouri children and animals, and I respectfully ask you to support this bill and help close that gap that leaves Missouri children at risk. You members of the Senate today have the chance to protect our most vulnerable, the ones who need us the most. And I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you so much for the work you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next, in support of Senate Bill 899.
Good morning, members of the committee. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Claire Coughlin, and I'm here to testify in support of SB 899. I'm here as someone who has both been a child welfare worker in the state of Missouri and has witnessed the relationship between child and animal abuse firsthand, but also as someone who now specializes in that link between human and animal welfare concerns. And I want to emphasize the important part that cross-reporting plays in the health and safety of vulnerable individuals and families. In my time as a direct services provider for children with a history of or high risk of abuse and neglect, I saw firsthand how animal abuse and child abuse coexisted in the homes I worked in. The bond between children and their animals is incredibly strong, as it is for all of us, and it can be used by abusers to control, manipulate, and punish them. As an in-home worker, I encountered animal abuse in the homes that I worked in. And I saw the negative impact it had on those children, but I didn't have the tools or the guidance I needed to address that. And as a young professional at that time, I would have given anything to have been trained specifically on the issue and been given some guidance and tools to report it. These experiences as a direct services provider in Missouri have shaped my current work, which focuses on the relationship between human and animal welfare issues. This work includes developing and providing free evidence-based training and screening tools for human and animal welfare professionals to help implement cross-reporting mandates such as the one proposed here, related to child abuse, elder abuse, domestic violence, and animal cruelty. I also conduct research into these intersecting forms of abuse, and one study that I worked on quite recently examined the relationships between animal abuse perpetration and child abuse perpetration and was just published in the International Journal of Child Abuse and Neglect in this past fall. And in that study, we found that the presence of animal abuse in any form whatsoever increased the likelihood of child abuse perpetration by 641%. This included significant associations between pet abuse, in that case including dog, cat, horse, reptile, hamster, guinea pig, and other small pet abuse, and that relationship between that and severe forms of physical and psychological child abuse perpetration. At this particular point, I'm actually working with the same research team on a similar study that examines the relationship between wildlife abuse and child abuse perpetration. And not surprisingly, our preliminary results again illustrate a strong association, with wildlife killing being associated with a 712% increase in any form of child abuse perpetration, and wildlife abuse or harm being associated with over a 1,500% increase in child abuse perpetration. I shared these numbers to impress upon you the gravity of the issue we're here to talk about and the importance of passing a strong cross-reporting bill that includes a comprehensive list of covered animals and animal abuse. In my work, I am consistently contacted by social services providers and advocates who are working with kids that are traumatized by animal abuse in their homes, and they are in need of resources that they just do not have. Similarly, I work with humane law enforcement and animal control professionals who are in a position where they encounter child and elder abuse every day. Giving these professionals the training and tools that they need to recognize this abuse and report it is a critical step in identifying family violence, interrupting a cycle of violence, and safeguarding the most vulnerable members of our community. And the sooner we can intervene in these violent households, the more likely it is that those interventions are going to actually be successful. So I strongly urge you to support these efforts and this bill. I thank you for your time and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, appreciate it. Thank you. Next, in support of Senate Bill 899.
Morning. Good morning, Chair. My name is Claire Wyatt, and I was a Jackson County prosecutor in the Kansas City area for close to 4 years up until the end of 2025. I'm now doing solo practice. But while I was at the prosecutor's office in Jackson County, I worked violent crimes, community engagement, crime strategies, which is really looking at the data involved in crime and what drives it. But from day one, I was also our animal abuse prosecutor. When I first learned about the link that you've heard some witnesses share about today, I thought, well, that's intuitive. That makes sense. Sure, I get it. I get the correlation. But nothing really prepared me for seeing this link manifest in virtually every single animal case that landed on my desk. And I will say that it is not very common that prosecutors' offices are even able to charge these cases based on a lack of investigation, lack of resources, and a lack of what I would consider proper attention given to this issue. When you know that the FBI has been tracking crimes against animals since 2016, and the same tiers they track murders, rapes, and arsonists because they see what a propensity somebody might have to hurt an animal and to hurt a vulnerable human. For 10 years, other agencies have been on top of this issue and recognize that link. Normally, this is the part where I would go into some of the horrible cases that I prosecuted and the overlap between violence against animals and violence against children. However, I think there's been plenty of that testimony this morning. So I'm going to just give a few more statistics specifically about the work I did in Jackson County. I want to start with acknowledging some folks have referenced this, but 3/4 of homes in the United States, 3/4 of the homes in the United States that have children also have pets. And of those 3/4, only 1% consider those pets to be property. The rest it's about 1/3 that consider them to be family members, 2/3 companions, like it sounds like Mr. Chair. And so only 1% are considering them to be property. Again, these are pets in the home. So there were 18 total animal abuse cases charged in Jackson County between 2020 and 2025. And long story short, all but 3 of those 18 cases demonstrated a nexus to violence, to domestic violence, to sexual violence, or to child abuse within our case management system, meaning I wasn't even looking at, things that might have been resolved in family court or city court or another state's court. This is just what was captured in Jackson County as to other counts on the case or the defendant's criminal history. It was startling every single time. And I want to note that if there's any concern, because I've sat in some of these hearings before, of this giving animal control too much power, or giving the powers of a police officer, I would ask, do we consider teachers who are mandatory reporters to have the powers of a police officer? My view of this bill is that it creates a much needed collaborative network that really needs to exist between mandatory reporters, between police, between animal control, between all the people that are involved in the nexus of this issue. And I honestly feel as though that collaboration would help police or animal control, whoever the proper authority is, respond more quickly and more effectively to these critical incidents where time is certainly of the essence. And we know these incidents are happening. We know the statistics. We see how many, child abuse cases and domestic cases are being charged. Why aren't there as many animal things going on too? We know that it's happening. We're just not having as robust of an investigation. And there's a lot of reasons on the prosecutor side why you'd want, to make sure that everything you could charge in a case was charged in order to get a good resolution, especially sensitive cases like this. So I think that collaboration will only elevate public safety and protect the state's most vulnerable constituents from 2 legs to 4 legs across urban and rural areas in Missouri alike. And so for all the victims and names you've heard referenced in today's testimony, and for all those countless unnamed and unknown victims and those yet to come, I pray that you will advance this bill through committee today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. We now have a quorum, so we are going to do roll call, and we'll get back to your bill, Senator, in just a second. So, Secretary, would you call the roll?
Senator Nicola. Here. Senator Hudson. Here. Senator Carter. Senator Lewis. Senator Nurnberg. Quorum is established.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Okay, anybody else here in support for Senate Bill 899 that is not from my side of the state or district? Don't think that has gone unnoticed.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be here today to speak in support of Senate Bill 899. My name is Joellen Klepacki. I'm the Director of Education at the Humane Society of Missouri, and I've worked in animal welfare for over 25 years, with over 23 years spent in the field of humane education, working with children, families, educators, and community partners. I have devoted my career to teaching empathy, preventing violence, and supporting children and families through trauma-informed practices. And I've seen firsthand how closely animal welfare and human welfare are connected, not just in theory, but in lived experience. The link between animal abuse and interpersonal violence is not theoretical, as my colleague from Wayside Waste mentioned. It is real, and it shows up in communities. We've had several of the statistics I was going to share today have already been shared, but one that I definitely want to mention is that research shows that 9 out of 10 survivors of domestic violence report that an abusive partner harmed or threatened a pet. And 60% of survivors delayed leaving because they feared for the safety of their companion animal. In my professional experience, those statistics are not surprising. I have worked with children who've disclosed violence in their homes only after first talking about what was happening to their pet. I have seen young people act cruelly towards animals who were themselves living in environments shaped by fear, instability, or trauma. Animals are often the silent victims and sometimes the earliest visible warning sign of a home in crisis. And this is why Senate Bill 899 really matters. This bill recognizes that professionals across disciplines already know, that abuse rarely exists in isolation. When an animal control officer sees signs of cruelty, there may be a child or senior at risk. And when a child protection worker enters a home, there may be evidence of animal abuse that signals escalating danger. Right now, those systems do not consistently communicate, and that's what Senate Bill 899 ensures that they will do. This is about better coordination, early intervention, and giving trained professionals the ability to share critical information before violence escalates. The National Sheriff's Association has voiced their support for cross-reporting legislation, as has the National Association of Prosecuting Attorneys. And as Claire mentioned, the FBI now recognizes the link between animal abuse and crimes against humans, and they classify and track crimes against animals in their statistics. In humane education, we teach children that empathy is not selective. You do not protect one vulnerable being while ignoring another. Safety is interconnected. By passing Senate Bill 899, Missouri affirms that principle at a policy level. We protect children, we protect seniors, we protect survivors of domestic violence. And last but not least, we recognize that protecting animals can be a pathway to protecting people. Senate Bill 899 also promotes trust, because when survivors disclose harm in any form, whether it's to themselves or their pet, their concerns will be validated. This bill amplifies their voices. After 25 years in this field, I can tell you that when we miss the early warning signs, the cost to families and society is far greater than the cost of prevention. And strong, safe communities are built on accountability and prompt action. And I urge you, with all my heart, to support this bill. I will accept any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Okay.
Any questions, Senator Lewis? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here in support of Senate Bill 899?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christina Elmore, and I'm the Vice President for the Missouri Animal Control Association, and I've also been an animal control officer for the last 14 years. The Missouri Animal Control Association strongly supports Missouri Senate Bill 899, which strengthens cross-reporting of abuse and neglect involving animals, children, elders, and other vulnerable persons. Animal control officers and humane investigators are often among the first professionals to encounter households where abuse or neglect may be occurring. Research and field experience demonstrate a well-documented link between animal control and animal cruelty and violence towards people, including domestic violence, child abuse, and elder abuse. SB 899 recognizes this connection and establishes a coordinated framework for identifying and reporting abuse across agencies and professions. This legislation appropriately requires training for animal control personnel to recognize signs of human abuse and neglect, while also requiring certain professionals to recognize and report animal abuse. By creating a centralized reporting system and clarifying reporting obligations, SB 899 will improve communications among animal welfare agencies, law enforcement, and protective services. This cross-reporting framework will help identify dangerous situations earlier, prevent escalation of violence, and enhance public safety for both people and animals. MACA believes SB 899 strengthens Missouri's commitment to protecting vulnerable populations and provides animal control officers with the recognition, tools, and responsibilities necessary to serve their communities effectively. We urge the committee to pass SB 899 and support coordinated efforts to prevent abuse and neglect in all forms.
Thank you very
I
much.
can
for
answer
your
any
time.
questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you
thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else here in support? Support.
Good morning, Senator. Good morning. Tom Robbins for St. Louis County Police Association, very much in support of this bill for all the reasons that were articulated before. Just wanted to clarify that this bill does not provide policing powers to animal control officers or anything like that. And also that there will be a forthcoming Senate substitute to clarify that this bill pertains to not just companion animals, but dogs, cats, and birds. And so this is not, we're not coming for livestock here or anything like that. Just want to be clear that we know our lane and it's not in the agriculture field. So with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No, seeing none, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's from my neck of the woods.
Thankfully. Whew. It's brutal on me. Anybody else here in support of Senate Bill 899? Okay, seeing none. Opposition. If you're in opposition to Senate Bill 899, please come on up.
Mr. Chairman, that's a hard act to follow. My name is Karen Strange. I'm the president of Missouri Federation of Animal Owners. I also have witness forms from Tony Duggar, who is representing Missouri Pet Breeders and the Sporting Dog Association. First of all, I want to say that we do not support any of the activities that have been talked about today. Of course, we do not support abuse of animals, humans, the elderly, or anyone. The concerns we have, and I'll leave some talking points with you, the major concern we have, and I'm from the rural area, so I'm not in the same neck of the woods as several of you. We just want to make sure that the proper authorities are notified, and we do not want to give, as just was previously mentioned, we do not want to give policing rights to others. We want, in the rural areas, we don't have the same situations as they do often in urban areas. We're more cautious about who enters our properties and why, and we just want to see the other end of the spectrum to make sure that at some time reporting is not done just because they're afraid they will be reprimanded if they're not reporting. And many of our people are very cautious about someone entering properties without a search warrant or law enforcement and so forth. Those are the issues we have with it. We just want to make sure that policing rights are not given to the other organizations. I'll leave these with you. I won't beleaguer it. Time is running short. But I appreciate it. And I do want to say that we certainly support the reporting and proper action being taken on cases that you're talking about. So,
Well, thank you for your testimony. Have you worked with the senator? Have you spoken? like, to
not
try
this
to
year.
work
We've
out?
worked with her many times in the
Okay.
past in agriculture, but we're willing to work with you.
Yeah, perfect. I appreciate your testimony.
Excuse me.
Seeing none, thank you very much. Anyone else here in opposition to Senate Bill 899?
Good morning, Chair and Senators. My name is Barb York, and I do work with MoFed. I work with Karen, as well as I am representing the Missouri Animal Husbandry Association today. I am with Karen. You cannot dispute the studies. I understand that. Right now, there is a study out there through Massachusetts that was done. They had put this in place, and then they did a study a year later. They have changed the law from a shall report to a may report. And it was because the staff of animals, elder, they have different names, handicapped, felt that a lot of that was taken away from the care of their humans that they were to take care of. I'm talking on the human side right now. As well as they have to form a trust with the people when they go into their homes. And a lot of the people were not allowing caregivers, social workers into the homes to care for them because they were afraid someone would take their animals. And a lot of them get out of bed every day to take care of their animals. One thing that they did change, they did go ahead and change it to may report. They can report regardless. And if you're responsible in your job, you're going to put that over into your animals. Animals need to be protected exactly. I get it. And we don't approve of abuse for anybody. One of the other concerns was I spoke to 3 different attorneys here in the building, and one of them said that when they read the part in there that's being added, one said it was horrible, one said it'll end up in court, and the other one is very concerned. When I asked about the protective services and welfare system of the state of Missouri, I asked, who will be mandated to do this? Will it just be the departments? Will it be everybody who is mandatory now for humans? And she said it would be everybody who is part of the mandatory system in the state of Missouri. Everyone. And they will all have to be trained. I think a lot of it is, you can see it. Some of it, I think, your social workers and those are probably the first to see the whole story because it's hidden behind the doors. You know, you're lucky if you see the abuse out in the yard, but you may not. I don't see a reason why you cannot work with somebody else, with animal control officers who do have animal control, or your law enforcement. The other concern that our breeders are having, our commercial breeders who are licensed and regulated with the state of Missouri, is does that give them the right to come to their properties when they are already regulated by the state of Missouri, Department of Agriculture? They have their veterinarians. They know what abuse looks like, and they would rather have them protecting them, working with them from that aspect. instead of bringing someone else in. Was that clear?
Well, I appreciate your
And
testimony. Thank you.
we would more than gladly work with the senator.
That's perfect. Glad to hear that. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. All right. Any others in opposition to Senate Bill 899? Going once, twice, 3 times. Seeing none, anybody here for informational purposes only? Except
Good
for
morning.
Cooper?
Another western side of the state. Testifier, Shannon Cooper today on behalf of Missouri Cattlemen's Association, and I think my concerns have been addressed, but visited with the senator on the way in today and have been working with the House sponsor. We just want to make sure that livestock is exempted, and I feel comfortable and confident that the sponsor wants to do that. And then our other issue would be when we set up these standards for abuse, we would feel much better having the Department of Agriculture through the state veterinarian set these standards and provide that training instead of animal welfare groups. But happy to work with both the Senate and the House sponsor on this to address our concerns, and I feel very comfortable we'll get where we need to be. Be happy to answer any questions.
Great, appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
So has livestock been taken out?
I think there's been a commitment to make sure the definition is dogs, cats, parakeets. And I haven't seen the sub, but I totally trust the senator that's where we're going.
No, we had talked last year, I think, a little bit about this, and
Yeah.
I've got an old horse that I absolutely adore and won't do anything about. But as much grain as I feed her, she's not going to gain weight.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
Our fear is some of these mandated reporters who drive down the road and they see your horse or some of my old cows and think we're starving them, and it's the life cycle of those animals as they get older, kind of like me, you get thinner. So anyway, we prefer just to be out of this, and I feel comfortable that the Senate sponsor and the House sponsor feel that way also.
That's great. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr.
it.
Chairman.
Anybody else here for informational purposes only on Senate Bill 899? Seeing none, I want to thank all of the witnesses who have got up and drove early in the morning to be here. Thank you for coming to the Capitol and sharing your testimony. Appreciate it. So this now concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 899. What do you want me? Keep on. Next is Senator Lewis and Senate Bill 1637. Senator, whenever you're ready.
Good morning. For the record, I am State Senator Patty Lewis, representing Senate District 7 in Jackson County. Madam Chair, I'm glad to see you this morning. Glad you're here. And other member of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 1637, which seeks to create a statewide communication access service program. A little bit of history about this bill. Clark Corgines, a constituent of mine, who you're going to hear from, reached out to me in 2024. And he shared information with me about the communication barriers that occur for deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind Missourians. For example, not having an interpreter services for extremely important high-risk situations like healthcare visits, hospitalizations, in the court system, and other essential services. There's currently a gap in complying with the American with Disability Act for our deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind neighbors and constituents. This is a grassroots bill. Me and my office have worked hand in hand with Clark and Becky Davis with the Missouri Commission for the Deaf of Hard of Hearing to create with the legislation that's before you. And this bill does 5 things. Number 1, the Missouri Commission for the Deaf of Hard of Hearing shall establish a statewide communication access service program to improve compliance with Federal American with Disabilities Act. The Commission shall develop a statewide registry of service providers, establish training standards, and maintain a website. The Commission shall submit an annual report to the Governor and the General Assembly. This creates a communication access service fund, which shall be used by the Commission for salaries of a program manager, distribution of financial assistance for communication access services, and distribution of scholarships. And lastly, subject to appropriations, the Commission shall finance requests for assistance in providing communication access services between agencies and businesses and administer scholarships. States who have enacted similar legislation include Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, Ohio, and Wisconsin. So in summary, this bill just seeks to improve compliance with the American with Disability Act for our deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind Missourians. We've got plenty of witnesses behind and to follow and share more information, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it very much. Any questions from the chair lady over here? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Witnesses in support of Senate Bill 1637. Just come right on up, one at a time.
All right, we're just making sure everybody can see. Hello there, everyone. I'm very excited to be here and share my thoughts. So I want to let you know first, thank you so much to the Senator, Patty Lewis, for being here and supporting us with this communication access bill. Thank you so much for the chairperson. Thank you, members of this committee, as well, for being here and listening. I want to thank you for your time and attention to the deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind community, and to have us be able to come here in support of Senate Bill 1637. Now, deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind individuals are very similar as far as hearing individuals, as far as we have numbers, but we are a minority. We do have a small percentage of constituents that are classified as deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind in the state. However, our goal with the Communication Access Service, abbreviated as CAS, is very powerful and would be powerful legislation for the state of Missouri under the support and running of the Missouri Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. This would allow for statewide services for both local governments to use and state government to use, businesses, small and large, and for individuals to have their needs met, both in their local communities and elsewhere. This will allow for the efficiency of all services to be provided. And will allow individuals that are deaf or hard of hearing to have effective communication with hearing agencies if necessary. We have three primary goals with this bill. Is that the first one and most important is that we want to break down the barriers of communication, specifically in rural areas as they face the greatest need, but also in urban areas as well. We want to break additional barriers that people are facing. Our other goal is to cover service gaps. So right now, there are shortages and coverage is minimal, if at all accessible. Due to the cost of services, that is another reason why that services are going, or people are going without services. This would assist for any auxiliary aids. That means a qualified interpreter, CART services, and or tactile interpreting services for those that are deafblind. I have a personal story that I would like to share with you. Myself, I live in Kansas City, Missouri. And our neighboring state, Kansas, has the Kansas Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. At a certain time, I had a very painful toothache, and I don't know exactly what was causing it, but I needed to go to a dentist who was deemed a specialist. And I received a referral for a place that I needed to go. Now, because I live so close to both Missouri and Kansas, they reached out to multiple entities, my primary dentist did, to the specialist. However, everyone declined seeing me because they said that they would not hire an interpreter for equal communication or communication access for me. So I tried and tried in the state of Missouri, but somebody had said maybe you should look in Kansas specifically because Kansas has this access fund that will allow these entities to pay for interpreting services. So I contacted Kansas Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing and informed them of my need of an interpreter and to have dental surgery. I told them that I must have an interpreter because with this dental pain, I'm not sure I was going to clearly understand all of the communication given to me, and I needed to make sure I knew exactly what was going on. Kansas understood completely, helped cover that bill, and I was able to have the surgery successfully. And I thought, boy, this is a service that Missouri, the state of Missouri, needs. So now Kansas Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, they have three different categories which they cover for cost. They have legal services. And then they also have the second category is for special health care needs or special health care services. And then the third is just basic general communication access. And this would be for anything that might be changing within a family or family planning or life planning. So again, we think that this would be very important for the state of Missouri to have. Now looking to another state that has this, the state of Colorado. They have different groups as well. And they have legislation that they passed specifically for court. And then they have a special legislation that they passed for rural areas. And their legislation that they passed in regards to rural areas has been super successful. The Massachusetts Council for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing is also working on communication access, and it seems to be going very effectively. I've noticed in our areas many barriers. I see it time and time again, especially with home nursing care. If you have an individual that is deaf-blind that needs in-home services of any kind, or a person that perhaps has had surgery or going through therapy or unfortunately has had a stroke and needs rehab services, most of them will not care for deaf and hard of hearing patients or don't know how and will not provide the appropriate communication support for them. And as you all know, the therapies that are necessary for recovery of these terrible life-changing circumstances, they can be extensive. And in some cases, thanks to lack of communication, there have been people that have perished. Thinking of family emergencies, important meetings, children with parents or vice versa. I mean, there's lots of disassociations or disconnections that can happen because of the communication breakdown. Funeral services is another one. Counseling services, going to the food bank. Group home services where people have to care for maybe a loved one. Or having emergency management personnel that responds to your family due to a crisis. And there's no interpreter, there's no access that's being provided to help cover. Educational workshops, entertainment, maybe even people that unfortunately are incarcerated, whether it be in jail or prison. Again, going back to therapy.
having meetings with a boss or any type of employer or agency, it was most effective with an interpreter. So I urge and beg you guys to listen to the individuals who are going to be testifying today. Listen to their experiences. You know, this is such, they are a wealth of knowledge and have really rich ideas that they can contribute that will help. This bill specifically will help us overcome these barriers that we're facing in communication. And, you know, your preference as far as communication, it is a human right. We need to have equal communication and not have oppression or any sort of limitations that we have already been facing as a deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind community. We, as your constituents, we are taxpayers. We do want to earn a living, and we do have a right for equal and fair access. You know, and our state is famous, you know, for the Show Me State. We're the Show Me State for a reason, so let's elevate us up. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate you being here. Do you have any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Yes.
So next in support.
Yes.
Hello, good morning, committee and chair and vice chair. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Senator Patty Lewis, for having us here. So this is an ADA access issue. As we know, the ADA was passed in 1980, and the deaf community was very excited because at that time we thought, yes, we're going to have equal access to services. But we still continue to face challenges every day in our jobs, in taking care of our children, and going to the doctor. And so when we thought that the ADA was passed, we were very, very excited that this was going to help alleviate some of those issues. However, now 30 years later, we are still facing challenges. But this bill is a hope that it will break down some of those barriers. So the Missouri Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, I'm so sorry, I just realized I believe I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Becky Davis, and I am the Executive Director at the Missouri Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And I have been working at the Commission for 3.5 years. And so during that time, I have seen various issues and various examples where we have gaps in services that are occurring. And behind each one of these examples, there are actually numerous people that have had very similar experiences. We had a woman that sat in the hospital in Southeast Missouri for 2 weeks seeking care. And for 2 weeks, she was requesting for an interpreter to be present. And she asked a consumer representative, hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? But unfortunately, decisions were made without her. And that was because she was deaf, and her husband as well was not aware of what was going on. So it was too late by the time interpreters were going to become involved. We did have another situation where a deaf individual had their children taken away from Children Protective Services and were not aware of the expectations that were going to be mandated of them. There was a separate situation where an individual was put in a county jail, and they stayed there for 3 days with no communication access. They had no written access. They had no interpreter access. And so thank God there was somebody outside that was aware that person had been arrested, because without communication, they had no idea of their court date or anything. Different group activities for children, such as Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or competitive teams, they are so small that they cannot get access to communication services for the deaf or hard of hearing participants. You know, there are several different court situations where you would think that it would be easily resolved. It's just a one-time, hey, show up, and we move on from the case. But unfortunately, there's cases that have been postponed due to lack of interpreting services available.
Another example would be small businesses, such as funeral homes. They don't know where to get an interpreter. They don't know how to hire one or, what they're supposed to do in order to assist families that are grieving in this matter or that have a deaf family member. For a deaf individual to get legal representation, that is extremely difficult as well. They're saying, nope, we're so sorry, we can't represent you because we can't afford interpreters. Same with mental health counselors in private practice businesses. Most of them will not want or can't afford hiring interpreters. So, wow, just wow, there's so much need out there. So that's the reason why the Senate Bill 1637 is a win-win situation. It would assist agencies in helping and knowing where to get services, So, okay, they find out where and how to get services, but then how are they going to fund them? That's the next challenge, and that will also be resolved with this bill. So now with having this program available, we would be able to have some of these coverages, these gaps covered. We could spread the word and have businesses know, hey, this is a service. And deaf and hard of hearing and deafblind members could then patronize those businesses accordingly. Senator Lewis had mentioned scholarships and money being given out. That was also in efforts to help improve the use and enforcement of the use of interpreters. Having in training for people to do better and improve their skill set in working with deaf and hard of hearing. And so we, as the commission, could help design our training in order to be able to enforce that. So again, we're not asking for special treatment, we're asking for equal access. Thank you guys so much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Really appreciate it. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you too.
Next in favor.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amber Carter, and I work for the Missouri Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I wanted to share both a personal experience and another experience as well for another individual. So this other individual cannot be here today in order to express their experience, but they went to a Taco Bell. They went through the drive-thru, and when they went through the drive-thru as a deaf person, the person who was at the window refused to take their order. And they ended up having the police called on them because they were deemed trespassing on Taco Bell property. And everybody that was working at the Taco Bell freaked out. They had no idea what was going on of how to interact with a deaf person. The police arrived, and the deaf individual said, hey, I was just trying to order food. That's it. That's it. That's all I wanted. Explained that they were deaf, needed interpreting services, calls were made, interpreters were not available. But the police had come with an intention to arrest this individual until later the issue was resolved. So that's just very scary. Again, no interpreting services, and it's just very scary. For myself, my personal situation, I am specializing in occupational therapy. And I had an internship that was going to be required of my program. And luckily, I had a college that was going to pay for the staff interpreter to cover for my internship. But any private entity that I was going to work with, I was barred from essentially because they were private and they couldn't afford to pay for an interpreter. And so I was supposed to see, various patients, senior citizens, children, youth, etc. And that's part of my role as an occupational therapist. And so many of them wondered, oh, well, you're deaf, how's the communication going to work with your patients? And the county, the rural areas, we can't afford an interpreter. We won't be able to get you access.
But the thing is that they just didn't know. They didn't know how to find an interpreter. They didn't know how to use an interpreter. I mean, there were just so many various reasons and excuses that were given. And that was really a barrier to my occupational therapy internship experience. I really hope that you support this bill. Thank you guys so much for listening to my testimony.
Thank you very much for your testimony. No questions. Anybody else in support? Thank you for that.
Hello, everybody. Hello, committee members. My name is Crystal Rush, and I wanted to share about my experience. Last July, my father passed away from dementia. He was the only hearing member of our family. Everybody else is deaf. He was our bridge to the hearing world. And unfortunately, in his decline, we really lost him twice. We lost him once physically, and the doctors at that time had ordered hospice care. We thought, oh, thank goodness, they're going to come, they're going to help us, we'll have some guidance, we'll be prepared, and they'll explain to us what we're to expect for the final stages within his case. But when hospice learned that we needed an interpreter, everything ceased. We had to wait 1 month. 1 month. You know what 1 month means when a person is at the end of their life? He wasn't able to walk. He wasn't able to talk. He wasn't able to eat. He required a lot of attention, and as his body continued to decline, we had no idea as a family to know what was normal, what was coming, or how to make him comfortable. We felt that he was suffering, and we were just grieving simultaneously, without guidance, without communication access, because we were deaf. Hospice brings education. They're supposed to bring family support, but instead, what we were left with was fear. We were searching for answers for ourselves. We were trying to put together information as a family and guessing what was going to be happening to our beloved dad. And every day we felt that it was urgent. Every day we felt confused. Every day we felt that we were failing him. I mean, we just adored him and loved him, but we didn't know what to try. And it was because we were denied communication access. My father died a few days later before a hospice finally scheduled to arrive. He died before the support arrived that we were promised. There was no peaceful transition as we had hoped. There was no guidance, and there was no closure. At the worst moment of our lives, I had to call 911 and to let them know that my father had died, and we were shaking. Our hearts were broken. I mean, can you imagine if you can't communicate with the emergency responders? You can't imagine communicating and having them walk into your home? My mom couldn't speak to them. We didn't understand everything that was happening. And we couldn't ask questions. We couldn't process what was going on. We tried our best, but we are left with trauma and definitely misunderstandings. They were patient, and we're very grateful that they were patient with us. But patience is not access. And we are not just grieving children and a grieving wife. We are deaf people trying to survive in a system that was not built for us. No family should have this experience to the communication, not when saying goodbye to a loved one. No one should be required to wait 1 month for hospice care because of sign language being a barrier. No one should feel helpless because their parent is dying. because there's no interpreter that's available. There is a difference between dignity and trauma, between peace and chaos, between informed care and helpless guessing, between feeling supported and feeling abandoned. If the CAS funding had been in place, then access would have been immediate. We would have known. We would have understood the stages for my father. We would have had the professional support that was necessary. We could have focused fully on him instead of fighting for communication access. We carry regret because of this instead. We carried unanswered questions. We carry the memory of just feeling so alone when we should have felt supported. I don't want your pity. I want change. I am speaking today because I do not want another deaf family to sit in their living room watching their loved one pass away and wonder what is happening. I don't want another deaf daughter or spouse to be calling 911 and feel invisible in their own emergency. I do not want another family to be told, wait a month, while death is approaching. We deserve equal access to health care. We deserve equal access to emergency services. We deserve equal access to hospice care. Being deaf should never mean being left behind in the most critical moment of your life. Communication is not a privilege. It is a human right. Please show your support in this bill. Thank you so much for hearing me out. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next in support. I'm assuming you didn't have a question.
Are you good? Yeah, okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Devon Whitmore, and I'm the community advocate at an organization called Deaf Inc. in St. Louis, Missouri. Our organization was established in 2008 and is based established for deaf families, parents, brothers, sisters, everyone. And we had a situation where the hospital was asked for an interpreter, for interpreting services. The father was in the process of passing away, and the hospital did not provide an interpreter. So a lawsuit was happening against the hospital. Money was received, and a discussion with the friends and family of this particular individual said, we need to use this money to set up this organization, Deaf Inc. So that is how and why we came to be. That is the foundation of our organization, and we are deemed a nonprofit in the state. We do primarily serve the St. Louis area. We have various programs that are offered nationally. Often, our office receives multiple phone calls from all over the state of Missouri. Pennscott. We do have an area that was Pennscott. They contacted us. They're pretty far away from us, and they said that they needed an interpreter. I mean, if you can imagine, our state has 10% people that are classified as hard of hearing in our state. Not all of them need interpreters, but maybe some of them use CART services. Myself, in my role, I train police officers and fire departments. And they notice that, as they continue in the profession, their own hearing is diminishing. And they feel that, in general, communication access needs are not only needed, but not met. There's many times where businesses, about 78% of businesses in the state of Missouri, there's about 70,000 businesses, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, interpreter correction, 170,000 businesses. And most of those are employment locations. And ADA requires, equal access. However, this is a hardship for many of these businesses because they cannot afford equal access for deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind. So most often we do get a lot of calls from families. We'll have hearing members that contact us, might have one or two deaf family members. They might have an individual that passes away. They might need assistance in life planning, such as a will or a trust. And when we get together with the family, the deaf family member has no idea what's going on after the loss of a family member because they're not included in any of these discussions. So deaf individuals deserve equal access and fairness in this after life planning for their family estate. That's just one example of many. We support this bill as an organization. We hands down support this bill as an organization. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Sir, I just had a question. Did you say 10% of the population of Missouri is deaf?
Yes, deaf and hard of hearing,
So 650,000 people in the state?
Yes,
Wow,
that is
okay.
correct. Mhm.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Next, in support. We have to be out of 10.
Hello, thank you, Leroy, being here. Okay, I'm profound deaf. You might look at me like you don't talk. I've been through a lot of situations. Well, for example, 3 weeks ago, can you understand me?
Yeah.
Most people could understand me, but other that person different. Anyway, for example, 3 weeks ago, I got hurt at home. It was my fault. I got a bad cut in my face. Whole thing's wrong. I was bleeding. Went in the emergency room, and they have a video relay interpreter, a monitor, recognized. That's good. Prefer a live interpreter, but that's all. I didn't have them at that baby. We were there for almost 10 hours. So they were playing baby at the same time. But when I was there, I was talking with my wife, and we done, and then we did our note. They would come in and we vote. They're like, they don't know what to do. Look at that person. I was dying. I use my voice, speak my wife. I don't need to. So I was talking, and then I looked and told her that I'm deaf. And I told him I can't read lip. And then she's like, okay, back to you got be all right. Like a monitor. Okay. Then from that point, I'm thinking, really it's not her fault because they're not aware. We're not having enough attack baby. If we have more service, provided more people there, at the same time I'm looking around, you can know, you not feel people open room, cut, log on, they're all prepared. but we don't have enough service to provide for them to understand, okay, it's that don't be false. Now, it's like, there's a lot of stories in my life. I mean, I'm grateful I can talk good, but I can see a lot of privilege taken out from young people. I mean, this young lady death, my grandkids is death, my daughter went through diamond farm, I had no access. There's so many things I've been through in my life, and I think, but I'm grateful I can talk. Even though, like, sometimes there's a situation like an officer will come, and the death, it's not my part, and the deaf person will try and communicate with the officer about the hearing people. They get ignored. Deaf people fill out a report, look at all lines, and I seen a person talk, I was really putting it up. But I'm walking, I stop in, I talk, you talk. Yeah, so I blame the whole situation. Then I look, report came. It's not fair to the deaf community. I mean, not everyone has the same talent like I have. I mean, I can talk well, but I still need an interpreter. I still need a staff because some people are hard to read up. You think pretty easy, but some are very hard. I can talk, but I don't get by. I make everything. I do make the thing a lot. And to act for that, it's hard for that person. And there's a lot of situations when I was young. I got pulled over. I was 18, for speeding and everything. I would have to pay because I was out of state. I was back in, and I was like, okay, I don't have money. I was 18, I don't have a credit card. I was like, oh, you have to follow me to the police station. It was a real kind out of nowhere. And I was like, okay, so I found an hour and a half ride to the police station because it's state trooper. And I was like, I was able to talk. But when you call my family, to pay the bill so I can leave, and they had no stuff. I had no way. A long time ago, technology wasn't great. So I was like frustrated. I have a TC line. A long time ago, I have a phone. You type in, look at phone. So I told Oscar I brought with me on a trip. Because, that was my only stuck baby to come McCreery in emergency. So Oscar went out to my car. I got my TC line, looking up on like the day I bought it. So I brought in, run the elevator, the cop pulled the gun up and pointed at me. I was like, okay, what's going on? My body was, I was panicked, I was like, trying to focus what he was saying. He said, open the box. I was like, so I opened the box, and looking at a gun poking him on the box. I was like, okay. Then I walk in the office, and I told him I'll plug it in. And I told him, give me your phone. The American person can't talk. I was able to talk, but I took the phone and I put it on the receiver, turn it on, and make a beeping noise. Everybody dropping on the floor. They thought it was a bomb. Okay. They have no knowledge. If you have more stuff, this will never happen. Technology now, Google, ChatGPT, amazing. They have one through the roof. I mean, couldn't believe technology, but depth after no. I have a long way to go. People need to be more aware of we have interpreters, different language, and we use ASL. Look at the American language. You read this thing on the street, I'm reading the same book. I don't have problem reading, but I expect for other people, definitely, we need to improve that. I think this bill will help a lot, in my opinion. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and just to let you know, you certainly have made me more aware of your struggles and what you're facing, so thank you very much. I apologize to the rest of you. I did not know that we didn't have this room for 2 hours. We're going to have to end this, the testimony on this bill, so I apologize. I would love to meet with any one of you that did not get a chance to in my office. Senator, would you have any closing remarks?
I just, excuse me, want to just personally thank Clark and Becky. I've been working with them for a couple of years, and they've I've learned so much from them, and for the witnesses who've come to testify. Thank you for just personally opening my eyes to some of the struggles, and it's been a pleasure working with you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for bringing this bill. So this now concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 1637, and I make a motion to adjourn. Do I get a second? We are now adjourned.
Anybody else with witness forms? I can take those as well.